Do you like BRs? Of course you do. And even if you don't, you're still forced to play them because all of your friends do. On paper, all of these games are the same. You do this.
Woo! Superhero landing.
Then.
This is video games 101. You kill bad guys, you take their shit.
Until you're the last team or person standing. This video originally started as why Apex is my favorite BR, but as I played the other games to get gameplay, I still found myself having just as much and sometimes even more fun than when I play Apex. So let's talk about what each of these games does right and where they fall short. Maybe in hopes of someone seeing this and making the end-all be-all BR. Before we get into things, obviously these are my opinions. You're free to disagree with them, but just know that if you do,
you are wrong! All of you are wrong!
We're gonna kick things off with the OG of the bunch, Pubg. Pubg was my first introduction to the genre and was actually the first game I bought on my Steam account when I built my first PC. But I only played about 15 hours before I got bored and started playing other games in my backlog that I couldn't run on my old toaster. At this point in time, H1 and Pubg were the two big BRs out, and after H1 made this happen...
I'm fucking dead, dude. I'm fucking dead, dude. I'm fucking, yeah, it's just nothing I...
I'm guessing I made the right call by not picking that one up. Let's start off with the positives of Pubg before we get in this game's ass. I absolutely love the character customization, and beyond aesthetics, it can actually help you out in combat sometimes. Outfits can be used to easily distinguish between different players in a crowded area. While it's completely possible to run into two players using the same skin in the other games, you aren't likely to see two players wearing the exact same outfit here. More important than the cosmetics, integrated first and third person modes that are always available are kind of a big deal. They effectively give you two completely different experiences within the same game, and both modes feel like they got an equal amount of love. Third person seems a bit more casual, largely due to how much vision you have. Apart from the 360 degrees of vision, in combat you can easily see around angles without actually peeking them and exposing yourself. First person is more immersive, but you're also more likely to die to someone that you never even saw. Apex did do a third person LTM, but it was kinda janky since obviously that game wasn't meant to be third person. But Pubg on the other hand feels like neither mode was made as priority over the other. We've also got the biggest map selection here, but personally I don't think the maps themselves are anything to write home about. They get the job done, but bland color palettes and uninspiring hot drop zones leave a lot to be desired. In regards to weapons, there's a lot to choose from in Pubg. Unfortunately, because of the shooting mechanics, guns in a given class don't feel that different from one another, at least not to me. Obviously, a sniper is going to play different than a shotgun, but I never felt the need to swap out a SCAR for an M16, for example. I'm sure that there are weapons that are just flat out better than others, but with the fast time to kill, usually whatever I find first is what I keep. Despite the fast time to kill, this is easily the slowest paced game in this video, which isn't necessarily a good or a bad thing, just kinda depends on the player. People are really afraid to be aggressive in this game, and if I had to guess why, it's probably because of how the maps are made and the limited defensive options you have. There's a lot of open area in between hot drop zones, and even in the hot drop zones, there's a decent amount of open space between buildings. You see, if you get caught out in Fortnite, you can just build the Avengers Tower and decide what to do from there. Apex has a long time to kill and crazy mobility to go with it, so you can be pretty confident running out in the open. Warzone also has a relatively fast time to kill, but a few seconds of good mobility can usually get you into a building or behind something in the environment. It also does another thing really well to discourage camping that we'll talk about later. But with the combined fast time to kill and no real way to protect yourself unless you happen to be near cover, more often than not, getting caught out in Pubg means that you're looking at going back to the start menu. Because of this, it's by far the best strategy to set up camp somewhere and wait for someone to come to you. I hot drop almost exclusively, and I still don't see anyone for the majority of the time that I play. It feels like if you don't get into a fight almost immediately after dropping, you likely won't see anyone for the rest of the match. When it comes to the actual combat, I kinda have mixed feelings. I am a fan of how much raw aim is required to secure kills. Weapons have insane recoil, like it seems like your character's first time shooting a gun crazy recoil. Firing a weapon on full auto without actively controlling the recoil is like
Everybody hands go up!
And even tap firing is like In Warzone, for example, since COD is mostly built around full auto weapons, there's a little bit of wiggle room when you're spraying someone down. The recoil is pretty forgiving, so you can easily adjust your aim as you spray. That is not the case in Pubg. Your shot has to be on if you want to win a mid to long range fight. If you're even just a few pixels off target, that shot is wasted and you've got to wait a second before you can get another fully accurate one in. Attachments like grips to help manage recoil and silencers to conceal your shots can help, but at the end of the day, pinpoint accuracy is what wins fights. The weapon handling might be a turnoff for some people, but I think it's a positive. If I lose a fight, I lost the fight fair and square. Not to a broken ability or because I didn't have any mats, the other person was just a better shot and or had better positioning than me. My problem is that the combat is kind of floaty, for lack of a better term, and landing a kill isn't really that satisfying. People kind of just fall over when they die in PUBG. You get text at the bottom of the screen after a kill or knockdown, but I really wish that there was a sound cue along with it. Apex gives you both a sound and visual notification when you kill or down someone, and that sound you get for a team wipe.
Let's go!
Nice.
I also don't like that there aren't any hit markers, especially considering the fact that the mobile version has them. You have to rely on blood splatter to tell whether or not your shots are landing, which depending on how far away you are and the environment you're in can be really tough. None of the weapons are hit scans, so for players unfamiliar with the bullet travel, it makes it that much harder to finish kills in darker areas. You can change the color of blood in the settings, but there doesn't seem to be a standout color that's always easily visible. Blue seems to be the best option, but I still find it hard to see if you're shooting at someone in water or playing on the map Vikendi. Beyond the floaty combat, the game is surprisingly unpolished for it to have been out for so long. Clunky player animations, cumbersome menu navigation, and a convoluted control scheme were all huge turnoffs for me back when the game first came out, and here we are almost 3 years later with basically no improvements. This game had the potential to be amazing, and for its time it was revolutionary, but to this day it still feels like it's an alpha. But don't take my word for it.
How does PUBG feel? The exact same.
Things like no overworld pings or squad respawn might have been acceptable early in the game's lifecycle, but after 3 years these oversights come off as the devs just not caring about improving their game. Take a look at this dance animation. Now compare that to how slow and clunky the vaulting animation is.
You better get your priorities straight.
In my opinion, lack of developer feedback and updates is what really killed this game. All of that being said, I still found myself enjoying my time back on PUBG. I'm not sure if it's nostalgia kicking in or maybe it's because I'm better with a mouse and keyboard now, but either way there is some fun to be had here. It's a little hard to recommend over the other games being the only paid entry of the 4, but if you've already bought it and haven't played it in a little while, it might be worth starting back up. It also goes on sale from time to time, and personally I feel a lot better about recommending it at $15 as opposed to $30. Now on to Apex. Apex was the first BR that really hooked me in and that I sunk a hefty amount of time into. After PUBG left a sour taste in my mouth,
That's what she said.
Michael, please.
in playing a grand total of 146 minutes of Fortnite before I gave up on it, I was pretty convinced that BRs just weren't my cup of tea. Fast forward to when the creators of Titanfall 2, which I absolutely adored, stealth dropped this gem on us. I knew I had to at least give it a try. Right off the bat, trios felt much better to me than solos and squads. When you're first starting to learn how a game like this works, you don't immediately want to jump into solos, and there's so much going on in squads that it can be near impossible for a new player to keep track of what's happening. To this day, I still believe that trios is the way to go when it comes to BRs, with duos being a fun secondary option. Comms tend to be better with a group of 3, and gunfights are usually cleaner with 6 people shooting instead of 8. Plus, we all know how much of a crapshoot randoms are. It's much easier to carry one incompetent teammate when you have one that's decent, as opposed to when half of your team is bad in squads. Apex has sort of a class-based system where each playable character has an active ability, passive, and an ultimate. I like this for a few different reasons. First is that characters aren't just empty models with rearrangeable skins like the other games. Their different personalities will cater to different players. Black female soldier?
Like a deer in the headlights. And I'm the headlights.
Towering gay Hawaiian?
Hey, try and move me. It'll be fun.
We even have a robot with abandonment issues.
I did really good today. I can't wait to tell my creator when I find him.
That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
This does limit customization, and while personally I feel the cosmetics overall are a bit lacking, that's a price I'm willing to pay this time around for a complete cast of unique and interesting characters. Each character is brought to life with all-around A+ voice acting, and aside from the banter between characters, they'll often tell you useful information as a player, from 10 seconds left to ring closing to letting you know when you're getting third-partied. This is a straight-up blessing for players like me that don't pay near enough attention to the ring, and before I know it, it's touching my cheeks.
I was like, damn, nigga, what you doing out here with all this ass? Double cheeked up on a Thursday afternoon, hella ass, the sun is still out, my nigga.
The class system also adds depth to the combat. Depending on who you're playing, you'll have different ways to fight other teams. Where a Pathfinder might use his grappling hook to catch a team by surprise or get out of a sticky situation, Crypto might use his drone to scout enemies and wait for them to approach him. This opens the door for more ways to expand the game with updates almost infinitely. It's only been out for around a year and a half, and we've already gotten a handful of new characters and weapons. What's really nice is that character classes aren't important enough to heavily impact the meta, at least at the level where most of us are. While there are some characters whose passives and actives are almost invaluable, every character is viable in certain situations. Mirage was the only one that was universally seen as useless, but with a completely overhauled kit in Season 5, even he has his uses now. Unlike PUBG, Apex is very well optimized. It has by far the best ping system of any game that I've ever played, and frankly I feel a little handicapped when I play the other BRs because of how good it is. You can ping obvious things like where you want to go, but you can also use the ping system to say someone's been here or I need a sniper scope. And while it may seem unimportant, I fucking love that I can say thank you to my teammates after they pick me up or ping an attachment that I need. Most of the time.
Gotta hop up here. Skull pizza.
I'm not thanking you.
Helmet here. Level 3.
I'm not thanking you.
Check out right here.
Found a body shield here. Level 3.
Evo shield here. I'm not thanking you, demon.
So you have chosen death. Didn't your parents teach you any manners?
Tower over there.
Speaking of attachments, they automatically attach to whatever weapon they're compatible with, and will even swap over if you pick up a different compatible weapon. This feature is available in PUBG now, but for some reason it's hidden in the options menu.
Why? Why? Why?
I do think that there is a little bit too much loot in the game though. There are so many different types of ammo, restorative items, and attachments that it's not uncommon to play a whole game and go into the late game with 1 or 2 empty attachment slots. This is extremely annoying in the early game when you land and you can't find a weapon, or you can't find armor, or you can't find additional ammo, and before you know it, you're in a fight with some type of severe disadvantage.
At last.
Apart from the occasional no-reg, the combat, in my opinion, is probably the most satisfying to master out of the BRs in this video. Weapons have predictive recoil, so if you're willing to put in the time at the range, you can completely nullify any recoil a weapon has. You're insanely mobile in Apex with wall climbing, sliding, and no fall damage. But I will say that it's not quite 1-for-1 with Titanfall 2. You can string together movement inputs in that game to make your pilot flow like water. Here it's more like coffee creamer. Double jumping and wall running do a lot to keep the momentum going in that game, and while I would absolutely love to see them added in Apex, they'd almost certainly have to be modified to work well with the time to kill. The mobility along with the relatively long time to kill in Apex combine for what usually feels like a good mix of maneuvering, character abilities, and shooting in a one-on-one gunfight, and you'll almost always have time to react to an ambush, unless you get headshot by a Kraber.
Now that's a lot of damage!
You're not coming back from that one. On the flip side, the long time to kill can be a little annoying, specifically when you're fighting multiple enemies. If a player has a purple or red shield, you're probably looking at a little over a full mag of some of the best weapons in the game to knock them down. One-on-one this isn't much of an issue, but when you're up against even 2 people, I'm sure you can see how this starts to become a problem.
Wait a minute!
Man, that is flagrant false advertising.
Knockdown shields can drag out fights even further, and in my opinion, I really don't think the game needs them. To put into perspective how stupid they are, a purple knockdown shield has 750 health. That is over 3 times as much health as you could have with max health and a red shield. So instead of thirsting someone and potentially armor swapping to help you against their teammates, you basically don't have a choice but to leave them knocked on the ground. Watch this guy tank a grenade after I've killed him and already put damage on his shield.
Yummy, yummy.
On the surface, it may sound like I'm just complaining because I want kills, which is partly true, but make no mistake, downed enemies can still heavily impact a fight. They can live ping your location, and a smart player can fight around a down teammate to block out your damage with their teammate's knockdown shield. That last one has always been something that's bugged me. I feel like after I've knocked someone, the only thing that they should be able to offer is comms and pings, not literally nullifying my damage when I'm already probably hurt from fighting them.
No! Now go sit in the corner and think about your life.
No. No, I don't think I will.
I've ended way too many games with 700, 800 damage and no kills because unless you can wipe an entire team, you will not get any of the kills. The potential stalling and prolonged engagements only add to what is easily the worst part of the game, the third partying. The biggest standing issue I have with Apex is how consistently you will be third partied and how little you could do about it. There are so many third parties in this game, and with no type of siphon, your retaliation options are very limited since it takes so long to heal. The small map size along with various movement options make it stupidly easy to roll up on a team after they get done fighting. Without question, third partying is smart and will always be a part of BRs, but I don't think they should be this abundant. Basically, since launch, people have been saying that health on kill or down would help a lot with this. Personally, I've been thinking that regening a percentage of damage done on down and full restore on squad wipe would help with both prolonged gunfights and third partying. While I honestly would be happy with either one, I really want to see them at least try something to combat the rancid third partying. There are also some sound inconsistencies, but I'm confident that they are working on fixes. Most of the time it works fine, but every now and then someone will dead silence their way right behind me and instant down me with a shotgun. Each character has different footstep sounds, and I think it has something to do with how the sound bounces off of the map, so while it might seem like an easy fix, I doubt it's as simple as rearranging some sliders. Respawn is doing a great job of listening to player feedback though. Mokey posted a video about ways he would improve Octane's viability when it comes to a competitive setting, and 6 months later they buffed Octane with a lot of his suggestions.
Six months later.
Permanent duos and rotation between the two current maps were added in the middle of Season 4 after months of players asking for the additions. But Season 5 is probably the biggest content drop we've gotten so far. Loba is the new kid on the block this season.
You got the right stuff, baby.
Her kit revolves around looting and her active is a teleport which they've somehow managed to make balanced. They made changes to world drops and care package loot, and we got some pretty big character changes and reworks throughout the season. They also did an overarching story for the first time throughout Season 5 that included some PvE elements. The actual PvE is a little simple and there isn't any of the excellent voice acting that we talked about earlier, but both of those could easily change in the upcoming seasons. Great mobility and weapon handling combine to literally make you feel like a superhero when you're having a good game in Apex. Games do take a while to get off the ground with the large loot pool stunning the early game, but once things do get rolling, non-stop action is sure to keep you on the edge of your seat. An expanding cast of characters and weapons, and devs that are actually interested in making their game better ensure that there's always fun to be had in the Apex games. If for some reason you haven't given Apex a try, this is an easy recommendation in my book. Season 6 is coming out tomorrow at the time of this recording, so go play as the new legend Rampart. Her kit seems to revolve around fortifying a position, and I've gotta say she's probably one of my favorite DLC characters design-wise. I'm a huge fan of her grungy aesthetic, and I think it's a great juxtaposition from last season's classy and elegant legend. She's got a cute little tooth gap, eyebrows thicker than Loba, and the same voice actress as Symmetra. Season 6 will also introduce a new weapon and an in-match crafting mechanic that will surely change up the flow of the games. Next up is Fortnite. Where do I even start with the cultural phenomenon that we call Fortnite? First off, big ups to Epic for taking a huge flop and turning it into literally the biggest video game ever.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
I mean seriously, what other game can Batman, Captain America, Travis Scott, and a fucking hot dog battle to the death?
I get those goosebumps every time.
Whenever Fortnite started gaining popularity, it wasn't ever something that really interested me, likely because of my poor experience with PUBG along with meme culture. The PUBG killer was everywhere, but I just never felt the inclination to play it. Until I started it up to get gameplay for what was going to be a video about why Apex was my favorite BR. Remember that 146 minutes I had logged?
Holy Jesus.
If you had told me 6 months ago that I would be maxing out a Fortnite battle pass, I would have been like,
You lying bitch. She is lying like a motherfucker. I know that. Ooh, that TSA shit tingles. This motherfucker's lying.
Admittedly, I did not give this game enough of a chance on my first go around, but either way, this is me officially on record saying that I was wrong about Fortnite. Fortnite's combat is easily the most unique in that while it is a shooter, building is actually the core mechanic. In certain situations, it may not matter how good your aim is. If you're fighting someone who's way better at building than you, your bullets probably won't ever come in contact with them. The ability to quickly build and edit structures is crucial, particularly in the late game when the circle is small and everything is close quarters. Most of the time, you're going to want to build vertically to obtain high ground where you'll have good vision and a better chance of hitting headshots. There are some advantages to staying low though.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
The hardest choices require the strongest wills.
Oh, when it all falls down.
This the real one, baby.
At first, I was completely against the building, mainly because I thought it was boring, but as the hours in games racked up, I started to notice how much depth there is in this one mechanic. At higher levels of play, build battles and box fights are just as much mind games as they are mechanical skill. You've got to keep tabs on things like which builds are yours versus your opponent's, where your enemy is, how many mats you have, and crosshair placement, all while building and editing as quickly as possible, looking for small windows of opportunity to damage your opponent. While it can be entertaining and admittedly a little confusing to watch two good players have a build battle, this can be very oppressive for new players. And since they took out skill-based matchmaking, if you're like me and got into Fortnite late, have fun getting absolutely clapped by 12-year-olds who can crank 90s in their sleep. If you want to consistently win fights, you need to hop into creative mode and practice your building. There are servers for you to specifically practice your one-on-one building and box fighting, and team death is a fun, albeit more chaotic mode to practice your mechanics. Outside of the oppressive building, the only complaint I have with combat is how weapons spread and bloom work. In short, weapons don't have crazy recoil in Fortnite. Instead, there's a percentage chance that your bullets will go anywhere within the inner radius of your crosshair. This is spread and you have absolutely no control over this. Bloom is the expanding and contracting size of the inner radius of your crosshair. Moving, jumping, hip firing, and spraying will all increase your bloom and in turn negatively impact your spread. Crouching, ADSing, and not moving will all decrease your bloom and spread. For the basic assault rifles, if you're checking all three of these boxes and tap firing, your shots should basically be 100% accurate. But for other weapons like the SMG, even with fully reduced bloom, the spread can still be pretty crazy. It's kind of the opposite of Apex's predictive recoil. The shooting mechanics bring a level of RNG to the game that I really don't like, particularly to the mid-range fights. In my opinion, it's counterintuitive to how a mid-range fight should be. Instinctively, you want to strafe to make yourself harder to hit, but by doing so, you actually decrease the chance of landing your own shots. I also think it promotes some lazy shooting tendencies. For example, it's much more effective to aim center mass with full auto weapons instead of going for headshots, since you're effectively cutting off half of your gun's damage radius after first shot accuracy. To me, Fortnite's map is the best out of these 4 games. Hear me out. I'm not saying that the other games have bad maps, but the level of interactivity that Fortnite's map has is untouched. Every point of interest feels like its own unique, iconic area, but everything still flows together seamlessly. Every time you discover a new location, the game introduces it with a title card and your map slowly fills in with each new area. This, along with the XP system, give off huge MMORPG vibes that I'm totally here for. The map also usually changes with each season, so around every 2 months there will likely be something completely new to discover, with minor changes throughout the season. Chapter 2 Season 3 started with a map almost completely covered in water, but as the weeks passed, the water receded, revealing new points of interest, and recently they've added cars into the game. Some POIs even have NPCs in them. Bosses can be found in set locations around the map, and defeating them will grant you a mythic weapon and access to a vault of loot. Again, big RPG vibes. There will almost always be multiple players landing in an area with a boss though, so it creates a high risk, high reward scenario. While I do like the idea of NPCs, they can be a little OP at times, and they can be pretty tough to deal with when someone is already shooting at you. Their aimbot's kinda insane and they will straight up burn through your build, so a lot of the time it feels smarter to not engage them at all. Especially in solos when you run the risk of someone rolling up on you as you're fighting them. They usually drop some good loot though. Marauders are the best way to get rocket launchers, which can easily destroy builds. The map ties into the challenges, which is another thing I love about the game. Everyone has the same weekly challenges, which can kind of create a polarizing experience. Sometimes it creates situations like these. but most of the time it creates these situations.
Let's do this.
Fortnite also takes a different approach to daily challenges. The first round of challenges you get for the day will give you 14,000 experience each, but after you complete them, the game will replace them with challenges that only give you 1,400 experience. Not nearly as much, but it's still nice to literally always have something to work toward for an XP boost. Along with the challenges, you have punch cards that are more long-term goals for the season. All of this XP goes towards leveling up your battle pass, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because I love how grindy the game can get if you want it to be. Even when you max out your battle pass, there's always at least one skin that will upgrade as you continue to grind levels. As someone who enjoys a good grind, I really like the more gamey elements that are implemented here. There are a ton of different weapons in Fortnite, and unlike a lot of other BRs where there's an obvious hierarchy, it seems like every weapon and item has its own intended uses to cater to different players and playstyles. Take this season's shotguns for example. For players that are confident in their aim and want to reliably one-pump someone, you've got the charge shotty. Massive damage, but almost everything else about it is bad. It has an abysmal clip, slow fire rate, and has to charge for maximum damage, which makes a noise and can give away your position. If you want something a little more forgiving with less damage but a larger mag and faster fire rate, there's the tac shotty. There are plenty of weapons that aren't the best for combat but are great for shredding through builds, grenades that don't do damage but send you or your opponent flying, and a flare gun that literally gives you wall hacks.
Revealing area.
And while some of the more non-conventional weapons are clearly meant for utility, almost everything can be deadly in the right hands.
Hadouken! Get over here!
Weapons come in and out of rotation with the seasons with new additions here and there. I do wish that in a given season there was more variety in the weapons though. Maybe 3 of each type instead of what mostly seems to be 2. The good news is that you can often play with vaulted weapons and items in the constantly rotating LTMs, and they're all available in the creative mode. As someone who got into the game late, I'm kinda bummed that I don't get to play with some of these weapons in the regular rotation. Just from playing in the LTMs I can tell that there used to be a lot more mobility in Fortnite, but you never know, the next season could always do a complete overhaul of world drops. Considering how much money I've already thrown away on this game, I've gotta talk about the cosmetics. Despite the cartoony art style, I was surprised to see how much detail the skins have in them. Things like physics being applied to hair and clothing that hangs off model, and different material renderings on the same piece of clothing were all welcome surprises. Some skins even come with multiple styles, ranging from simple color swaps to adding completely new elements to the model. And we cannot forget the emotes. There are a lot of maniacs in this game, and let me tell you, there is nothing quite like absolutely stomping on someone who was brave enough to rush you and then emoting on them as they deconstruct and are forced to spectate you. You've got the quick and simple emotes, but if you're feeling really toxic, a lot of the dances have longer and surprisingly impressive animations. PUBG has emotes too, but they aren't getting any more of my money until they fix their game. And the ones that are meant for after you get a kill are a little too rigid for my liking. Look at how my face doesn't change throughout any of these emotes. I've also got to applaud the direct purchase model as opposed to having loot boxes. The skins can be a little on the pricey side, but at least you know what you're getting. You can view character models along with any additional stylings in their entirety before you buy them in the shop. Lastly, I'd be remiss to not mention the events. I was originally only going to briefly mention them while talking about the map, since they are what often causes it to change at the end of the season, but I feel like they need their own section. Where events in other games will usually introduce a new game mode and last for a round of Fortnite, there's always an LTM available, so that doesn't really serve a purpose in this game. Instead, Epic will schedule a time where players can drop into a game that has no player killing and watch something go down on the map. You really don't know what's gonna happen during a Fortnite event, but whatever it is, you're in for a treat. I can't think of another game that takes this approach to in-game events, and I'm always one to applaud someone for going against the grain. They seem to be getting better as time goes on, and the last one left us on kind of a cliffhanger, so I'm excited to see what the next one has in store for us. From the outside looking in, Fortnite is just that game filled with 12-year-olds that everyone loves to meme on. Don't get get me wrong, it is full of little kids. But beneath the memes and cartoony art style, there's a surprisingly mechanically demanding game here. Although the building can be a little intimidating at first, there are a plethora of game modes and tutorials to help you learn the ropes. To anyone that loves BRs but hasn't ever downloaded Fortnite, I would strongly encourage you to at least give it a try. Take it from someone who 2 months ago was shitting on my friends for playing this game. After almost 4 days of playtime, I can confirm that last and certainly not least, we have Warzone. Get ready, cause I have almost nothing bad to say about it, at least in terms of how I feel a battle royale should function. There's a reason why everyone is switching over from the other BRs to Warzone. I can confidently say that this is the best made battle royale available right now. Let's start off with the obvious thing, the Gulag.
Dude, the SKS is so trash.
You ready?
Oh my god.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
The Gulag is easily the best innovation in the genre since its inception. I'm sure that you all know what it is, but for those that don't, basically the first time you die, instead of being out of the game or having to wait to be revived, you get put into a 1v1 with another random person that has the exact same loadout in a small arena. Matches are usually over within seconds, but in the case of a prolonged Gulag, after 15 seconds a flag will spawn and capturing it can also grant you the win. I want this in literally every battle royale from now on. Think about all of the problems that this solves. How many times have you landed in the same area as someone and they find the best gun in the game, full armor, and a fucking aimbot all right next to each other, but all you could find was a grenade and ammo for a gun that you don't have yet. We've all been there, and the Gulag is a big sigh of relief when stuff like that happens. Streamers and content creators have been complaining about how fast Fortnite games are over now. Add in a Gulag mechanic and immediately the games last longer. It's not a complete get out of jail free card though. You've still got to be better than the other person in your ghoulie, and the fact that it's technically not even a 1v1 perfectly encapsulates the BR genre. Bystanders can throw rocks at players in the arena, and while I've never seen it firsthand, I've seen many clips on Reddit of someone camping by their C4 or proxy mine only for a rock to hit it and then they lose the Gulag. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that Warzone is the most fair BR. If someone kills you with a broken weapon, it's not because they got lucky and picked it up off the ground. They killed other players and completed contracts to get their loadout drop. Everyone starting with a pistol and 2 slots of armor is also actually kind of huge. If you're landing your shots, there's a decent chance that you can kill someone that landed on a better gun, whereas in every other game, if someone lands on a gun and you don't, you're almost definitely dead. There's much less of an emphasis on floor loot and a real push to go for your loadout drop, which brings us to the money system, another phenomenal addition. Remember that thing we talked about earlier that pushes people not to camp? Scattered around the map, you'll find contracts that once completed will give you money. You can use that money to buy things like UAV, self-revive, dead teammates, and of course your loadout. Instead of focusing on good weapons or attachments to make fights easier, a loadout drop allows you to use whatever class you've created, including weapon attachments, perks, and lethals and non-lethals. You can sit in a building and hide all game, but you really don't want to go up against a team that has their loadout, self-revive, and a UAV when all you have is floor loot and no perks. The game will drop you a free loadout a few minutes into the match, but it'll often be close to another team's to encourage you to fight, and you still have to go get it. For the most part, everyone is running around the map trying to complete as many contracts as possible, until late game where things will get a bit more campy, but that's just how BRs work late game. The weapons themselves are in a special place, since with Modern Warfare's great gunsmith mechanic, all of the weapons are your own creations. You can turn assault rifles into SMGs, put burst mods onto single fire weapons, or kit out guns to have virtually no recoil. Not everything will be viable for Warzone, but it's always fun to mess around with attachments to see what best fits the role you have in mind for a gun. This also makes the game kind of balance itself, since if something is OP, everyone can easily make a class with it. That's not to say that there aren't weapon imbalances though. Currently the Bruin and FAL are destroying Warzone lobbies.
They're gonna be to your right.
Yeah. What is he using? The Bruin?
You already know what it is.
But as is the case with every competitive game, the meta is always changing.
Are you ready for a miracle? Ready for me. Are you ready for a miracle? Set you free. Are you ready? Ready. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?
Nope.
That's not enough, Dad!
There does need to be something said about the DLC weapons and their unlocking methods. They're stupid. If you don't unlock a DLC weapon within the season it's released, you'll have to do a challenge to unlock it, and they're usually pretty dumb. Things like get 3 kills with LMGs near smoke in 15 matches isn't even easy to do in multiplayer, so it's really gotta suck trying to do it in Warzone. These challenges are the one area where some players will have an advantage over others, and I'd like to see 2 challenges to unlock weapons in the future, one for Warzone and one for multiplayer. Other than your loadout, buy stations also bring 2 things that I really like to the game. First is self-revive and how it works. Apex is the only other game here that has a self-revive, but the problem is that it's tied to a legendary item and it takes literally twice as long as a regular revive, so you'll almost never actually get to use it. Lifeline is now able to revive down teammates with their drone, which is a step in the right direction, but most of the time getting back on your feet mid-fight isn't an option. Self-res is only $4,000 in Warzone, so it's pretty easy to get, and with its quick activation you can pretty reliably revive yourself if you don't get instant thirsted. You can also buy your teammates back at the buy stations, and unlike every other game, you don't have to sit at the buy station and wait for someone to headshot you. You click on the teammate's name that you want to revive and exit the menu. That's it. I've literally bought back teammates mid-fight and just gone back to shooting. And since they spawn back in the map with a weapon and armor, they can actually be useful in a fight. In the other games, respawning a teammate often feels like more of a hindrance than a help since you're left vulnerable while you respawn them, and even once they get back in the game, they don't have any loot. Respawning broadcasts your location in all of the games where it's available, and it's not uncommon for a team to rush you and wipe your squad with very little you can do about it. These are 2 seemingly small parts of Warzone that end up heavily impacting the gameplay, and I'd love to see the other BRs take something from the formula here and inject it into their own games. Combat is fun, but it's substantially easier than the other games. It's Call of Duty, so you kinda know what you're getting into. There's no crazy weapon handling, no building, no advanced movement like the other games. For the most part, you just point and click and people die, which depending on who you are can be a positive or a negative. I think there is something to be said about starting at ground zero and feeling yourself improve at a game over time. That's not gonna happen with COD for most of us since it's a game that we've been playing for literally years, and it's kind of meant to be a game that anyone can pick up and have fun with right off the bat. Other than aiming and general positioning, which are both important in every BR, there isn't much to master here. I've taken month-long breaks from this game and immediately come back to slapping kids who probably aren't even old enough to be playing it. Personally, I find the lack of challenge to get a bit boring after a couple of hours, but that's just me, and it's honestly more of a problem with COD as a whole than with Warzone. As fun as the game is with friends, for some reason solos and playing with randoms really don't do it for me. If I had to guess why, it's probably because of how big the map and player count are, and the game doesn't really seem to be made for solos. That being said, if you can get even just one friend to play with you, duos are infinitely more fun to me. I don't necessarily think this is a negative since it mostly feels like a personal preference thing, and the game is so much fun when you're playing with people, but I don't know, let me know what you guys think. Personally, if I'm playing alone, I'd much prefer to hit up solos in Fortnite or try my luck with the randoms in Apex. If you need a break from vanilla Warzone, there are a few options available. Plunder is a more forgiving alternative and it's really good for farming XP. It's also a great game mode to test out guns for people that don't have the base Modern Warfare game. Instead of last team standing, your main goal is to collect as much money as quickly as possible by completing contracts, searching chests, and stealing from killed players. There isn't any gulag in Plunder. Dying will only drop some of your cash and give you a 15-second respawn timer, after which you can land back on your team. If you get squad wiped, the game will start your drop in a random part of the map. This means that you can't easily go back to kill the team that killed you and took your money, or if you die doing a contract, it's probably gone. I like this in concept, but the redeploy system actually hurts an otherwise fun game mode. For one, I think the respawn timer is a little too long. 15 seconds might not sound that bad, but even when the 15 seconds is up, there's another good 4 or 5 seconds of your character loading in before you can play. The other problem is that I often found myself unknowingly dropping in on another team, and before I have time to redirect my shoot, I get beamed out of the sky. And what do you know, I'm back to spectating for another 15 seconds. This can create a cycle of dying and waiting 15 to 20 seconds to respawn, which obviously is not fun. I think lowering the respawn timer to 10 seconds and some sort of spawn protection would make things flow a lot better. I don't want full protection while you shoot, but maybe 3 to 5 seconds worth on activation, and it goes away once you land so people can't just activate it near the ground and get free kills. There are marked deposit locations where you can dump all of your cash to bank it so that you don't lose any if you die, but you're probably gonna have to fight for it since people like to camp the beacons for easy kills. I'd really only recommend this game mode if you want to grind XP or Warzone challenges, or if you want to test out classes in a Warzone-like environment. Not because it's bad per se, but it gets rid of some of the best parts of Warzone. Like Fortnite, there's always an LTM available to accompany Plunder and Warzone. I've never really paid attention to them since I have so much fun with base Warzone, but they're there for you if you want something different. The only two that I've noticed are Stimulus Warzone, which allows for infinite gulags as long as you have sufficient cash to pay your way in, and a 50v50 game mode. But the 6v6 isn't even fun in this game unless you're on shipment or shoot house. so I'm guessing that at best that game mode is 8.3 times less fun than the multiplayer. Playlists update every week, which I think is the perfect amount of time for an LTM to stick around. While I enjoy the Fortnite LTMs more, sometimes they're only available for a couple of days before they rotate out. Other than a new glitch that literally turns your gun into polygons and makes it hard to see anything on your screen, the only substantial problem that Warzone has is an abundance of cheaters. And it's not just Warzone, I've been seeing a lot of cheaters in the multiplayer recently too. They're a little annoying but easy to deal with in multiplayer. You can just report them and leave the match, but it's not that simple in Warzone. You could be playing for 20 to 30 minutes before you're even in the same area as a cheater. And while I haven't run into one in Warzone yet, I know it's gotta suck to lose a high kill game because a literal multi-billion-dollar company can't add in software to flag a blatant aimbot. The manual review thing that they have going on obviously isn't cutting it, so they need to do something about this ASAP. Other than the cheaters, the only minor annoyances I have are the occasional sound inconsistency and sometimes vaulting not working like how it should. Warzone brings quite a few innovations to the BR genre that keep things fast-paced and keep you playing even after falling in battle. It's objectively the best designed battle royale available right now, and apart from the rancid cheaters, there is very little to dislike about it. They've checked every box for what makes a BR fun and even added a few new ones to the list. Again, we've got an easy recommendation with this one, especially if you can find a few friends to play with. So which one of these games is for you? Well, it depends on what you're looking for. I can genuinely say that I enjoyed my time on all 4 of these games, and even though I think Warzone is the best in terms of design, they all excel in different areas. If you want a slower pace, more tactical experience, you've got PUBG. Looking for something with a lot of mobility and constant action? Consider dropping into the Apex games. Whoever you are, whatever your taste, you'll likely enjoy at least one of these games, so give at least one, if not all of them, the old college try. If you've made it this far, I'm gonna assume that you liked the video, so do me a favor and go ahead and hit the little thumbs up button down below. This one took a while to make since it's literally 4 games and I had to completely learn how to play one of them. I also tried to get somewhat recent gameplay for all of them, but all 4 of them are on different season schedules, so that in and of itself is its own challenge. If you want to stay up to date on the videos, consider hitting the sub button. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go play 8 single player games before I even touch another battle royale. Thanks for watching until the end. Make sure that you're staying safe and taking care of yourself. See you in the next one.